This time on Turbo Build, finally it's happening. I'm going to get this turbo installed. G'day folks, my name is Brendan and welcome to Turbo Build. Now, before we get into this, there is one small apology I do need to make. You see, unfortunately, I did record the footage of me assembling the turbo, clocking it, installing the studs, and attaching the manifold to the turbo and the dump to the turbo. For some reason the camera had a bad moment and this is about the best of the footage I could get out of it. So you'll just have to imagine in your mind the many hours spent putting it all together until we got to this. So let me get you up close and personal and show you the details. From back here working forward, we've got a 3-inch V-band connection to the rest of the exhaust. That's welded onto a flex joint here. These two pieces I welded on myself and I think they'll hold up reasonably well. And I've painted it with a bit of white high temp paint for shits and giggles really. The dump itself is all 3-inch and that's wrapped in the DEI titanium exhaust wrap stuff, which is very nice. You can see the O2 bung there. As we move up the dump pipe, you can see here where it's bolted into the turbo. There is a zip tie there that is just for short-term purposes, not long-term purposes. The O2 I'm running is a wideband from Innovate and LC2. So we'll throw that into the dump later on when we get to actually installing this in the car. Moving back up to the turbo, we've got Inconel studs and locking nuts. The nuts haven't yet got their little fancy tab things on them, but I'll do that later once things are actually happening. And those studs also exist on the turbo to the manifold, as you can see there. So I am running the factory wastegate, although of course it is controlled electronically via the Megasquirt 3 ECU and your typical 3-port Mac valve thingamajiggy. And you can see I'm also running the standard Sylvia turbo outlet. Moving on to the hoses and fittings and things, we've got the stainless water lines that are on sort of either side of the center of the turbo, which is called the CHRA. You can see those here, and these are fixed with nice big fancy Banjo bolts. Now, this is just an eBay kit, seems to be a reasonably good quality. Fairly happy with that. And the nicely sized turbo drain for the oil you can also see. And just here you can, if I get the camera to focus, maybe not. Anyway, you can see the Banjo bolt for the oil feed line at the top of the turbo there. There we go, we got some focus. The other end of that, here we are, is, so this is a 4AN line. The other end of this goes into the back of the head, and so I'm taking the oil feed from the back of the head, which is a fairly well-known source, although most people tend to take it from the oil sender, or the oil pressure sender on the intake side of the block. Back of the head's just easier as far as I'm concerned. And the turbo manifold itself, I've actually welded on these 3 studs with some nuts to hold on a heat shield to try and keep temps controlled, basically. So the manifold and downpipe are both made by Nitrodan here in Australia. And that's kind of the whole kit and caboodle. Next step is of course to put it in there. So there's a nice big gaping hole that we need to fill with turbo. So let me show you some of the details here. First of all, you can see the Delrin engine mount. I did actually have to cut and weld this coolant inlet pipe for the water pump. The turbo gets just a little bit too close to it, and I gave it a quick notch, bent it down a little, welded it up, and that just gives me the clearance that's necessary to easily get the turbo in and out without having to play with the hoses for the coolant and all that sort of thing. The other thing is the turbo, trying to install the turbo gets a little bit in the way of my coil pack, so I do have to unplug the coil pack wiring just to keep it safe. So I think it's time we got this thing actually installed. Wow, that is a milestone that we finally achieved. Really excited. The next thing we need to do is throw the nuts on to bolt the manifold to the motor. Just hook the water and oil lines up, and that's pretty much it. The turbo install is done and it'll run. Next up, we've got some body and paint work coming soon. I'm going to be painting the doors and a new fastback roof before we get to actually start the thing, which would be really cool. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the turbo is an S14 GT2560, if you're wondering. We're getting close to the end of this turbo install build, starting it. All of that stuff's going to happen very soon. I appreciate all of you for watching. Don't forget, if you haven't already, to please subscribe. Give the video a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.